When Frank Holloway retired from the force, he thought his days of chasing killers were behind him. He imagined quiet mornings, fishing trips, and Sunday barbecues with the same group of friends he'd known for over 30 years. But everything changed the day he stumbled upon a forgotten box of cold case files in his garage. He opened the box expecting old paperwork. What he found was a link to a decades-old murder that was never solved. And worse, evidence that the killer may have been sitting across from him at the dinner table all these years. Frank Holloway had served the city of Brenton Falls for 27 years, a career detective with a reputation for his gut instincts and integrity. He'd closed dozens of cases in his time, everything from armed robbery to murder, but there were always a few that haunted him. One of them was the unsolved murder of 19-year-old Lacey Martin in 1993. She had disappeared after a summer party at the lake. Her body was found 2 weeks later in the woods, beaten, strangled, and left to rot. No arrests were ever made. The case went cold. Frank was one of the original detectives assigned, but without witnesses or strong evidence. It eventually faded to the background. He never forgot her face. 5 years after retirement, Frank was cleaning out his garage when he found a box labeled BFPD Code 93. He opened it, expecting old training manuals or paperwork for storage. Instead, he found a thick file folder, case number 13422, Lacey Martin. Photos, statements, forensics. It was all there. And something else, something he hadn't seen before. A handwritten note tucked inside the back cover. It read, "Check the composite sketch again. Doesn't match the timeline." He lied about where he was. It wasn't signed. No date. But it was written on BFBD stationery. Frank's mind began racing. He laid everything out on his garage workbench. As he flipped through old witness statements, something caught his eye, a testimony from a 19-year-old boy at the time, a friend of Lacey's named Tom Kellerman. Tom had claimed he left the party early and didn't see Lacey after midnight. But Frank suddenly realized something strange. Tom Kellerman was now Tom Reynolds. He had legally changed his last name in 1995 after getting married. Tom was also Frank's friend. They went fishing together twice a year. Their wives had lunch on Saturdays. Their kids went to the same high school. Frank had never made the connection. Frank began digging deeper. He called a former colleague at the BFBD and asked for a favor, an updated background on Tom Reynolds, including any records under his former name. What came back chilled him. Tom had been questioned in 3 other assault cases in the early 90s. Before Lacey's death, all victims had dropped charges. No convictions, no arrests, but they all described the same thing. A tall, dark-haired man who drove a maroon Chevy pickup and wore cologne that smelled like pine. The same description Lacey's best friend gave the night she vanished. Frank's hands trembled as he picked up the old case photos again. There it was. The same truck, parked in the background of a party photo. Still unsure, Frank didn't want to believe what he was seeing. This was Tom, his friend, the man who toasted his retirement with a laugh and a beer. Frank decided to confront him, not directly, but casually. He invited him over to watch a game and recorded the conversation. "Frank, you remember that girl Lacey Martin? Back in 93? Tom, shrugging. "Yeah, tragic. That was a long time ago, though. They ever catch someone?" Frank, "No, but I found the case file again. Can't believe how close we were." Tom, after a pause, "Some people are just monsters." But Frank noticed something. Tom started sweating. He avoided eye contact. He left early. Frank confided everything to Julia. Together, they quietly reopened the case on their own, off the books. Julia had contacts still inside the department. With their help, they ran the DNA found on Lacey's clothing again using modern technology. The results? A partial match. Not enough to convict, but enough to narrow it to a family line. And the match was linked to Tom's half-brother, who had died in a car accident in 2001. Frank was stunned. The killer may have been closer than ever, but what if it wasn't Tom? Or worse, what if it was both? Her name was Dana Myers. Frank tracked her down in Ohio, where she now worked as a nurse. She remembered everything. Lacey told me she was afraid of Tom. She didn't want to go to the lake party. She said he'd been following her. I told the cops back then, but I don't know. It didn't go anywhere. Frank asked if she would talk to detectives again. She agreed, armed with this new witness statement, the DNA partial match, and the circumstantial evidence. Frank and Julia submitted the case back to the department. An active investigation was reopened. Search warrants were issued. Police recovered an old duffel bag from Tom's attic during a search. Inside was a necklace. Dana identified it instantly. That's Lacey's. She wore it every day. Her mom gave it to her. Tom was arrested that week. The trial took place nearly 30 years after Lacey's murder. Frank sat in the gallery every single day. He listened as prosecutors laid out the timeline, showed photos, read Dana's statement, and presented the DNA match to Tom's brother, suggesting Tom and his half-brother had assaulted Lacey together. The brother was long dead, but Tom had survived and lied. Tom's defense team argued the evidence was weak, old, circumstantial, but the jury didn't buy it. The final blow came when Frank was called to testify. He spoke softly. I've known the man for 30 years. He was my friend, and I didn't see it. That's what haunts me the most. Tom Reynolds, formerly Tom Kellerman, was found guilty of second-degree murder and aggravated sexual assault. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Lacey's family cried in the courtroom. So did Frank, but not out of sorrow this time, out of closure. Today, Frank Holloway volunteers with cold case units, helping young detectives sort through files that others forgot. He knows now that evil can wear a friendly face, that killers don't always hide in the shadows. Sometimes they sit at your table. He spent a lifetime catching killers. But his most important case didn't end in a badge or glory. It ended with a box in a garage, a girl's voice finally heard, and a man who learned that the past never truly stays buried. In memory of Lacey Martin, 1974 to 1993. May justice never sleep. Like this story? Subscribe for more shocking true crime stories. Comment below. Have you ever suspected someone you thought you knew?